Hey everybody, Caleb here. Today I'm working on something a little different, which is kind of the usual. I'm working on something more of a furniture build. You know, I'm not really a furniture maker, but today I'm giving her a shot. I am working on a pedal board of sorts. I've got a rough drawing here. So this is kind of a side view, and it's going to have slats that go across the length, and I've got two woods sitting here on my desk. You can see I've got a big piece of mahogany and a big piece of maple, and I've started cutting this maple up, and this is the side. I've got a little ways along now. You can see this is the side view here. It actually is a little long, but I've got these spots. These are where the mahogany slats will go across. So basically it'll sit kind of like this, and then the mahogany will run across here. And I'm going to put an angle on this eventually so it'll lean, but for right now I'm working on one piece at a time. These spaces in between what will be the mahogany strips are so you can feed cables through, or power supply, whatever you need to feed through it. That's what that gap is for. All this wood is just stuff I went and picked up at the big box store. Initially I was going to thin this down a little bit, but you know, after thinking about it, I think leaving it a little heavy is not an issue. So it came 1 3/4 inches, and I think I'm just pretty much going to leave everything that way and work with it that way. You can see the what I'm getting ready to cut out, there's actually 1 3/4 inches in depth. That's for the mahogany. I'm going to take this over to the bandsaw and make these shallow cuts first, and then we'll figure out some way to knock that whole section out. But I'll figure that out next. So we'll go over to the bandsaw, get set up, and do these cuts. Well, that's not bad. I think what I'm going to do next is I'm going to go over to the littler bandsaw, because this has got the big blade in it. So it's not going to do turns real well. I think I'm going to go over to the littler bandsaw with the littler blade. And that's really what I mean. It's the same size bandsaw. Anyways, I'm going to go ahead and start trying to knock some of this out. That should make it a little easier for me to come back and clean up. So we'll go over there and see if we can't knock some of these notches out on the littler blade. Alright, so I think I can clean the rest of this up by hand, and I think that's what I'm going to try to do. I'm using a file and just taking it down to that pencil line. I'm doing that all over, and that should get my lines nice and flat and square and just like I want them. There's probably a better way to do this, but I'm working with tools I'm familiar with, and you know, safety first, that sort of thing. And you're always safest on the stuff you're more familiar with. So this may take me a bit longer than I don't know, someone surely knows better, but this is what I'm comfortable with. So this is what I'm gonna use. Well, it ain't perfect, but it's good enough for now. I need to make another one for the other side out of this piece here. So I will get to doing that right now. And there we go. So these both need just a little bit more cleanup work, probably. They match pretty good, but I could use a little bit more cleaning up, making sure everything's square. I think I'm going to do that. I'm going to take a little break, stop here. We'll come back to this tomorrow. As I'm doing the math, I need to get more of this. I don't actually have enough of this mahogany that I'm going to use for in between here. I made this pretty big, and that was intentional. I wanted lots of room, and I wanted it to be nice and strong. So I'll just go ahead and go get me some more of this tomorrow, and we'll start back at this again. So I think this is some good progress. I think you can kind of see how this is going to go. Basically, this mahogany is going to sit in here like this, and it'll leave gaps for you to run cords or whatever you need. For now, this is what we're going to go with. I'll do some more cleaning up off camera, and starting tomorrow, I think we'll start working on the cross pieces. So here's a tool we don't show using every day. I'm over here at the chop saw. I've already ripped down the piece I had, and I've kind of got a little bit more mahogany, and I'm getting ready to cut it to length. You can see, I think you can see here, you can't. You can see here, I've got this set up to stop, so this is the length I need, so I can just cut it, push it, cut it, push it, and I get perfect lengths. So essentially I've got it thrown together here, and they fit tight enough that it's holding together right now. Nothing's glued or anything yet, but I'm realizing my gaps aren't big enough. I am going to sand all these planks down a little more. That's going to help a little bit, but I still think it's not going to be quite big enough. I think I'm going to maybe take a little extra material off in this area, kind of a big oval. I think that's going to open this up enough for me to get cords and stuff through here. I went and got an audio jack because that's a good standard, and it will go through if you make it go through. And you know, just a little bit more sanding, and then it would probably just go through. But it's not like easy by any means. So I think we're going to open these gaps up a little bit. If I were going to do this again, I'd make these gaps a little wider. If I were going to do this again, I'd make this a little longer and maybe drop off, not do these two, and then just make the whole thing a little longer. That being said, I think this is pretty good. But I'll work on the spacing when I get to finishing these. What I think I'm going to work on next is getting the slant on these sides. So it's going to angle this way. So all these will get progressively lower as they come towards you. I'm going to work on that. So I'll take this all apart now, and we'll get to work on making the frame a little bit better. So essentially the front is going to be 3/4 of an inch shorter than the back, and that will give it a slight angle forward. So you can see there I got that line on there, and that's the same line that's on that one. So I'll just cut this, and then it will sit with that slight forward angle, so it's a little easier to access everything. Alright, so I went ahead and knocked out a thin cut along here. This is to, actually it's to reduce the surface area so I have, more feet and less surface area. It's going to rock a little bit less, or run the risk of rocking a little bit less. I just knocked this off on the bandsaw. I'm going to finish it up on the spindle sander. So to open these up, I'm going to mark about 1 inch in on both sides. And then I'm just going to run them on the spindle sander here just a little bit, and that should open up a gap in the center. So I've opened these up now. Now they're a little bit more kind of dog bone shaped. You can't really tell until you're really looking, but it should help get things in between the gaps. I've also rounded off the edges on these, and I've rounded the edge on the inside portion of the sides. I'll do the outside portion alongside this all at once I get everything glued on here, which I'm ready to do. So I'm going to start gluing them on here. And I'm not going to start with the outside ones. I'm going to start with one that's in the middle, I guess. That way it should help lock everything together. I'm going to put 1 or 2 more in just to make sure it's all square before I go clamping that up. Well, the battery died right before I got them clamps on there, but that's okay. You can see what it's like, and I'm going to do it again with this one over here. And I'm working my way from the outside to keep everything square, or that's the idea at least. And I think it's going to work. Alright, so that should help me keep everything square. Now I can go ahead and glue the other ones on. Shouldn't have any big issue. I'll take care of that here in a second. Well, this has been sitting up for quite a few hours, so I'm going to start taking clamps off of here, and then we will start sanding on this, I believe. So I'm working on sanding this, and I've just got the palm sander out. I've done most of this side, which is why the clamps are now over here. And it's just snugly, it's not tightly clamped down, it's just barely snug. And that's just so that this doesn't move around, so I can focus on the sanding portion. And, you know, it's cleaning it up really good. That's probably good for now. I rounded that corner off. That feels really good. I didn't round this corner off yet, so I'm going to flip it around and then do this side. And then we're just about done sanding this thing. I've been sanding for a little while. I'm going to do a little bit of hand work in these places that I can't obviously get that. Make sure these are all rounded over real good. And then we'll see where we go from there. Well, some of you might have seen that I had put a little label on over here. I didn't really mention it, but now I am. When I started sanding, I sure enough sanded right through it. I had the laser cutter etch it on there, and so, you know, I sanded right through it. And there's no way I'm fitting this whole thing back in the laser cutter, so I went ahead and just made some that I'm going to glue on. Here you can see what it says. Right now this doesn't mean much to anybody, but it will eventually. So that's going to go on right there. I'm just going to glue it on. And I've actually made one for both sides, so they don't have to be perfect. Nothing else on this is. Alright, so I'll get the other one glued on and we'll let that sit overnight. And then tomorrow, I'm going to put a little bit of finish on here. I'm just going to use a rattle can, just something to make it last a little longer and, you know, be a little bit more resilient. So I'll show you before I put some finish on it, maybe a little bit of putting finish on it. We'll come back at this tomorrow. So I actually got impatient and I waited about a half hour for those to set up. They're not going to be, you know, have any stress on them, so I'm not too worried about it. I'm going to go ahead and put a coat of finish on here. I'd like to get this video that I'm recording out tomorrow, so I'm going to try and get maybe 2 coats of finish on here tonight. Real light coats, maybe another coat on first thing in the morning, and then we should be done. I'm not real worried about getting a perfect finish on here by any means, but it'll be what it be. So I'm going to vacuum this off and then take it outside and spray it. I would take you outside and show you spraying it, but it's 8 o'clock, so because it's November, it's dark, and there's no way I'm going to show you anything. So I'll show you what it looks like after I get the first coat of finish on there. So there's coat number 2. Actually, you know, it says it dries the touch in 30 minutes, so I went ahead and just waited. Got 2 coats on there, and I cannot advise spraying in the dark. Anyways, it turned out alright. You know, it's going to be good enough for what it is. I'll probably put 1 or 2 more coats on it tomorrow, but for tonight, it's good enough. So this has had quite a few coats of finish on it, and plenty of time to dry. Enough for me to handle it at least. And this morning, Jerry was throwing away parts of, this is like floor mat that you'd put down, you know, like fatigue relief kind of thing. Anyways, he had cut it up and used it for something else, and he threw away a little piece, and I thought that'd make really good kind of feet for this. That way I get rid of any wobble I might have because they're soft. So I already coated a little bit of CA glue on there to kind of seal it up. I'm going to put a little bit more CA glue on there and hope that holds them on there pretty good. Worst case scenario, you just knock them off. This will also mean that you can put it on any, you know, hardwood floors or anything. You're not worried about scuffing the floor. Not that that's going to be a huge concern, but it might be there for someone. And I actually thinned these down a little bit, so this side was totally smooth. Then I put some CA glue on it to make sure all the pores were sealed. Waited for that to dry, and then here we are. I tell you what, that couldn't have turned out any better, I don't think. Considering my experience doing something like this, I'm really happy with that. Well, I'm really happy with the way this turned out. You know, I'm not going to claim that it's a masterpiece of furniture building. And, you know, there's a few flaws and there's lots of little things. If you were looking for them, you'd totally find them. If you were holding it in your hands, you'd probably go, that's not quite right. But for this thing's purpose, I think it's perfect. If I were going to do this again, there's a few things I'd do different. Like I've said before, these gaps were a little small. It'd be nicer to put those out a little bit wider. I'm not sure I would make these strips quite as wide. It's hard to get wood in this width. It was about 2 inches. And of course, you know, if you go by what should be 2 inches, it's actually only 1 3/4 inches or 1.5 inches. So I'm not sure I would do 2 inches again, but if you were building this out of scrap, you'd have all the pieces you wanted, or you could make it work with however you wanted to make it work. For my purposes, that's turned out really good. It's got a good angle to it. It's not much, but I think it'll, it'll give you that access that you need. I think it's a good height. You can stick whatever you need underneath it. The biggest thing for me is that this is wood. It's not going to be as strong as metal, but that means it's totally customizable. At some point, if you had maybe one pedal that had a larger power supply or a knob on the power supply and it didn't fit, you just take a drill bit, drill it out. If for some reason you needed to run another cable under here and it wasn't fitting, you could just drill it out. You can adjust this as need be, and that's good because I'm not actually keeping this one. I am giving this to Troy because he needs one. The one he's using now is made out of old pallet wood and is falling apart. So I'm calling this a birthday present to Troy. In case you were curious, both of our birthdays are this week, and I do believe Mr. Jerry Rose's is this week as well. So, if you want to send gifts, better hurry. I'm joking, of course. But no, this thing turned out really good. I don't know that I could ask for any better. I'd like to show you with some pedals on here, but since they all went home last weekend, I can't. But that's what it looks like. I'm real happy. Hope you enjoyed watching my little off-topic woodworking project. If you have any suggestions on how to improve the next one, please leave them in the comments. This was not meant as a how-to video. This was more like, look at what I did. Do you have any suggestions? So I am totally open to hear what would you do different. Any ideas to make it work better for what it is. I would much appreciate. So once again, thanks for watching.